Well, okay. So today I wanted to talk about profiling, specifically because I just put my game in closed beta on Android and noticed there was a ton of slowdowns. While testing it on Windows, it's a nice computer, it's all nice and smooth, but on Android, you know, who knows, right? So once I started testing it, I'm like, oh, why is it so laggy? So what I did is I went to Unity, ran the profiler, and I was able to diagnose a lot of scripts in my code that weren't very efficient, right? And I'm specifically going to point out today one of them that I want to just teach people how to set this up. And I think it's worth noting that I intentionally saved performance analysis until late in development because it's a great practice to do. When you worry about over-optimizing too soon, you end up just wasting a lot of time, making the code more complicated than it needs to be, and it just ends up being a big mess. We'll talk about more about that at the end. Let's just get straight to the meat of it. So, here's the game. This is Rescue Pets, right? So now what we do here is we notice, okay, there's no lag here. It's pretty good. There might be to you on the stream, I don't know, but it's not to me. Oh, that's not right. So we can go to this little stats thing here in this player, and here we see it's around 80 to 90 frames per second, maybe 75, and yeah, that's great. But on Android it's not. This is a beefy computer. Even on my laptop it's only like 30 to 60. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, whoa. What we do is we go to Window, we go to Analysis and Profiler, and it opens this window, right? So we can see our nice CPU usage, we can click on it, and this gives us a frame of the game. And in this menu you can see, okay, how much time is each part of the code in Unity taking? How many calls goes to each one? What's the percentage? So we can use this to diagnose. We can go into it and we can say, okay, in the player loop, this is specifically something that we can deal with, because it's the update loop, it's behavior update. And we're like, okay, it's taking 4 milliseconds to do update. Wonder which script's the highest. Ah, it's the effect performer. Okay, cool. In the timeline view, you can see this immediately. You notice how of all these, when you zoom out, you're like, huh, this one just sticks out like a sore thumb, doesn't it? And it's pretty incredible. Of the whole thing, it's almost half of the whole player loop. So that's a pretty big deal. So let's go into this script and see what could be causing it. Okay, so here we are. This is the effect performer. It's a simple class. I wrote it in like a minute or two, right? Because I knew I just needed to go for each effect in my game, find all objects of effect, perform an effect over the time of the update, right? So this makes sense. It looks like simple code. What could be the problem? Well, a few things jump to my mind immediately, Maybe some of these effects take a long time. Maybe there's a lot of things in this for loop. Maybe this for loop could go on for like 1 million of them or something. Do we really want to be doing a for loop in the middle of an update? So, I knew there couldn't be 1 million. There's actually around 100 effects in the game. So I was like, okay, 100 should be pretty slow. I know that each one's not very intensive. Each one's constant time complexity. So that's not a big deal. So I was like, okay, what else could it be? And honestly, it's pretty simple. It's just this line right here. So what happens here is every time we do an update, we create a list of all the effects. Okay, so that's great and all, but do we really need to? Well, no, you don't. What we could do is we could cache this on start. So let's just go ahead and do that. So we're just going to cut this, and we will replace it with this effects variable. And this is just going to be we're going to generate a field in the class. and then we'll simply say that on start, effects will equal this, and we'll add a semicolon. It's a dead simple change, right? It takes a minute. The reason why this will still work in my game, you have to be careful because you're like, okay, well, there was one thing I changed here. And if I had a unit test like I should, I'd be able to know immediately that this would break. But the idea here is if more effects get instantiated over time in the game, then this will break down because I'm only getting the effects at start, and then they're cached. But I know in my game, the effects on start won't ever change. Or at least the effects might change, but the list of effects won't change. There'll never be any new ones. But if there were, what I would do is still, instead of doing it in the update loop, I would serialize the field and pass this list in via the Unity inspector. And then some other class could edit that list while this class can just read from it. But because I know that effects aren't used, that's a useless feature, we won't add it. So this is good clean code, we'll save it, and then we'll go back to the game, let it compile for a second. And remember the frames per second was, what was it? It was like 90 tops. Let's see. Notice this was 3. So let's just pause it there. You can instantly see that the frames per second here is now 128. Looking down here, let's just look at the timeline here for a second. You see that, yeah. Now there's a different thing, wait for job ID. But it's easier to see in the raw hierarchy. That behavior update is now pretty quick. Effect performer is down to, it went down 100 times. That was a really slow thing I did. See, and here's the thing. In this blog post, you can read about it, but you do want to watch out for typical bottlenecks, you know, when you're thinking about architecture and coding. You know, like you don't want to make stupid or silly, inefficient queries, you know, or read and write to disk too much. You know, it's just things you should know. Here I wasn't aware because I was a novice to Unity whenever I started that that would be such a bottleneck in my code. And that's perfectly fine, you know. It was so easy. Unity makes it so easy to just go in and find these things that that's a great thing to do. It's better to make the code simpler when you start because then it's easier to read, it's easier to maintain, so many things, right? Anyway, so yeah, that actually did a lot. And you know, you can even see that if we keep playing here, we'll keep going. If you keep playing here, you'll get to the point where it's just listen to music a little bit. Right, this looks like it's going up, but it's just the scale. Right, so at this point, we get to see that, yeah, the update loop just got really small. I'll show you just one more thing here in this because it's easier for me to see. Notice in this one that this spends how long? 2 milliseconds, 2.5 milliseconds, just waiting for the target frames per second, which was 120 that I set. That's a great thing, you know, that Unity actually has to wait because there's so much extra time. So, yeah, that's a nice, simple little code change. You can commit that and get a little A+. So, yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say. If you're interested in profiling and performance in general, definitely check out this blog post, because it's very interesting, I think. Don't worry too much during the coding phase, and profile in the testing phase. That's exactly what I'm doing now, and it's working well. So thanks for watching, and please follow, like, and subscribe, and all that jazz. Peace out.